The millionaire pretended to be unconscious until he heard something shocking from the maid. Darkness clung to Ethan Hale like a thick, damp fog until a hard white light pierced through his eyelids, dragging his consciousness slowly upward from a deep, silent pit. The first thing he felt wasn't pain, but the heavy, paralyzing weight of his own body, as if it didn't belong to him. Sounds reached him distorted and distant. Footsteps, the steady beep of a monitor, voices echoing as though from the bottom of a well. Ethan tried to part his lips, but they wouldn't move. He tried to twitch a finger, and a shot of pain raced through his arm. He was trapped between wakefulness and oblivion, unable to escape either. Then he heard it, sharp heels striking the hospital floor. A familiar fragrance followed. Vanessa Clark, his wife of 2 months, the woman he once believed could help him rebuild the shattered pieces of his heart after losing Anna. He listened as the door clicked shut, and Vanessa's voice, soft but precise, filled the quiet room. "Yes, I'm here now. His condition is critical." Ethan wanted to open his eyes, but instinct urged him to stay still. And then he heard the words that froze his blood. "The life insurance policy. 15 million, right? If he doesn't make it, how soon can the company shares be transferred?" A dead, echoing silence filled Ethan's mind. Vanessa went on, her tone colder than the room around him. "And the kid, Emma? Just sent her to boarding school, somewhere far. She's not really my responsibility." The heart monitor beside him suddenly spiked, beeping faster. Ethan forced himself to breathe evenly, forced every muscle to stay limp. But inside, something was breaking apart. When the call ended, Vanessa inhaled deeply and turned toward him, switching her voice like flipping a switch. "Ethan, honey, I'm right here. You're going to be okay." The sweetness was so fake it made his chest ache more than any injury from the crash. The door opened again. Dr. Marcus Reed, Ethan's longtime friend and personal physician, stepped inside, tense but composed. Vanessa immediately reported, "He hasn't woken up once, completely unconscious." Ethan heard every syllable, each one a blade. When Vanessa finally left the room, the air eased. Marcus leaned over the monitor, and Ethan gathered every thread of strength he had left to whisper, "Marcus, I'm awake." The doctor froze, eyes widening. "Ethan, you can really hear me?" Ethan struggled for breath. "I heard everything. Insurance, the company, Emma. Vanessa wants it all." Marcus clenched his jaw, shaken and alarmed. "Ethan, you suffered major trauma. You might be misunderstanding." "No. You have to promise. Don't tell anyone I'm awake. I need to know what they're planning. I have to protect Emma." Marcus hesitated, then nodded slowly. "All right. But this is a dangerous gamble." Ethan shut his eyes, his breath trembling. More dangerous is trusting the wrong person. And in that frigid hospital room, Ethan Hale made the decision that would change everything. He would continue pretending to be unconscious. As Ethan lay frozen in place, his breath shallow and his mind reeling from Vanessa's words, a buried memory abruptly surged upward. It was as if the shock had cracked open a door his brain had been trying to seal shut. And suddenly, the night of the storm came flooding back, so vivid he could almost feel the screech of twisting metal in his hands again. The sky that night felt like a single block of darkness, dense and suffocating. Rain hammered down onto Pacific Coast Highway, not as droplets, but like the ocean had been torn open and released straight onto the coastal road. Headlights stretched across the wet pavement, trembling in long streaks in Ethan Hale's rearview mirror. He tightened his grip on the steering wheel, his knuckles pale in the dashboard's glow. He had driven this road hundreds of times, yet never had it felt this dangerous. The wind from the ocean hit the car in sharp, unsteady bursts. But the storm outside wasn't the one truly unsettling him. It was the storm of numbers and discrepancies spinning relentlessly inside his mind. Missing funds, vanishing contracts, server logs tampered with, and Colin Mercer, his co-founder of more than a decade, offering explanations that sounded reasonable but never settled in Ethan's chest. Suspicion sat beneath his ribs like a stone, heavy and persistent. Ethan exhaled sharply, deciding he would meet with his attorney first thing in the morning to audit every financial trace. He didn't want to believe Colin was betraying him, but he couldn't ignore the cracks spreading wider every week. The traffic light ahead turned green. Ethan pressed the accelerator, the car gliding through the intersection. And that was when everything exploded. A pair of headlights shot toward him from the opposite lane, blindingly bright, moving far too fast. No, impossible. Ethan barely had time to think before instinct jerked the wheel to the side, but the road was slick as oil. The car skidded, fishtailed, and in a split second he heard nothing but metal twisting, glass shattering like hail, and the crushing force of impact folding the vehicle around him. Then silence. No light, no wind, no ocean, only absolute darkness swallowing him whole. For a brief moment, one final memory flickered through his fading mind. Emma's smile, her tiny arms hugging his neck each night before bed. And Anna, his gentle wife taken by cancer 2 years ago, glowing faintly somewhere in the distance of his thoughts like the last sunlight after a long winter. When Ethan opened his eyes again in the hospital, the world had already changed. He didn't know who pulled him from the wreck, didn't know who drove the other car, didn't know what had caused the collision. But he knew one thing with painful clarity. The unease haunting him these past months hadn't been wrong. This crash didn't feel like an accident. And after hearing Vanessa talk about insurance and company shares, everything snapped into its darkest, most terrifying shape. Something far more sinister was tightening its grip on Ethan Hale's life. And that stormy night was only the beginning. The memory of the stormy night receded like a retreating wave, returning Ethan to the cold, quiet ICU room. He lay there helpless, surrounded only by the steady rhythm of machines and the hollow ache expanding in his chest. As his heavy eyelids drifted shut, another face emerged from the darkness. Anna. Her gentle smile, her soft hair falling across her shoulders as she leaned over to read bedtime stories to Emma. That image had once been Ethan's entire world, a sanctuary he believed would last forever. Until the hospital called late-stage cancer. 6 months later, Anna was gone, leaving behind a void he didn't know how to fill except with work and pain. Then Vanessa entered, right when he was at his weakest. A woman too beautiful, too polished, too perfectly attuned to what a lonely man wanted to hear. Ethan once thought she was a blessing. Now, after hearing her cold words in the hospital, he understood a painful truth. Sometimes the prettiest thing is the most dangerous trap. He had let Vanessa into his life, and worse, into Emma's. The thought made him want to rip the wires from his body and roar. A week later, when the ambulance brought Ethan back to the Brentwood Hills estate, the Los Angeles sun was bright, but he felt nothing except a creeping chill. Vanessa walked alongside the stretcher, clutching her purse, her face arranged into a carefully crafted mask of concern. To the paramedics, she looked like the perfect, devoted wife. But as soon as the bedroom door closed, that expression vanished, replaced by coldness so sharp, Ethan wondered if he had ever known the real Vanessa at all. Moments later, small, timid footsteps approached. "Daddy?" Emma. Her voice trembled, fragile as a cracked glass. She climbed onto the bed, her tiny arms wrapping around Ethan's arm as if it were her last anchor in the world. "Daddy, please wake up. I miss you." If someone asked Ethan what the greatest pain in his life was, at that moment the answer wouldn't be the crash or the betrayal, but the fact that he couldn't hold his daughter. He wanted to tell her he was here, that he heard every word, but he had to remain still, silent, like a warm corpse. The door burst open so violently, Emma flinched. "Emma! What do you think you're doing?" Vanessa snapped, storming into the room. "Get down! Do you want to hurt him even more?" Emma shook her head desperately, tears spilling. "I just wanted out, now!" Vanessa grabbed her arm and pushed her out without a second glance. Emma's muffled sobs echoed down the hall, slicing into Ethan's heart like broken glass. After a tense stretch of silence, the door opened again, quietly this time. Lena Torres stepped inside. "Hi," she whispered, unsure if he could hear her. There was no performance in her voice, no calculated sweetness. She simply adjusted the blanket, smoothed the hair at his temple, and placed a warm cloth along his neck with a care that felt almost sacred. "Emma misses you so much," she murmured. "She cries herself to sleep every night. I just hope you get better soon." Her voice trembled, not with fear, but with empathy, a raw, unfiltered sincerity that seeped through the coldness surrounding him. As Lena stood there, Ethan felt something click inside him. Emma needed him, and maybe, in this house, slowly drowning in deceit, the only person who truly wanted him alive was the quiet woman adjusting his blanket with trembling hands. The Brentwood Hills estate grew unnervingly quiet that night, the kind of silence that made every shadow feel like it was listening. Moonlight spilled across the ceiling in pale streaks, and the ticking of the wall clock felt like a countdown to something he couldn't stop, his own helplessness. The bedroom door opened softly, a sound so faint only someone desperate to hear it would notice. Lena Torres stepped inside, her shoulders slightly hunched as if afraid to disturb him. She looked at Ethan for a long moment, her eyes gentle, yet weighted with a sadness she carried alone. "You're probably asleep," she whispered, sitting in the chair beside him. "I'll just talk for a bit, because if I don't, I think I might break." Ethan remained still, but every sense sharpened. Lena intertwined her fingers, steadying her breath. "My mother called today. The doctor said Arya needs to start a new treatment plan immediately. The disease is progressing faster than they thought." "Arya?" The name struck Ethan with unexpected force. He'd heard Lena mention her daughter before, but never like this. "She's only 7, Lena continued, her head bowing slightly. "She loves drawing butterflies and insists on wearing purple dresses every day, but now she can't even hold a pencil." Her voice cracked. "The doctors say the treatment could cost up to $200,000. $200,000. She let out a small, humorless laugh. "I'm not even sure I have $400 in my account. I work 3 shifts a day, run from place to place, nap in break rooms, and it's still not enough." Each word trembled in the air, fragile and aching. "Arya is staying with my mom in East L.A. I only see her on weekends if I can get the time off." Lena clenched her hands tighter, nails pressing into her skin. "I'm scared that one day I'll open the door and won't hear her say mama anymore." A tear slipped down her hand. Ethan longed to reach out, to wipe it away, to tell her she wasn't alone, but his body held him prisoner in a silence he hated. Lena looked up at him, her voice soft but sincere. "I don't know if you can hear me, but I hope you recover. I hope you return to Emma. She needs you, and..." She inhaled deeply. "I think this world still needs people like you." When she left the room, Ethan lay there, his heart squeezed tight by invisible hands. He saw Anna, saw Emma, felt the pain of the people he loved, and now the quiet desperation of another mother. By dusk, the Brentwood Hills estate no longer felt like a home, but like a stage set waiting for something terrible to begin. The house felt too large, too hollow, as if even a falling leaf could echo through the halls. Ethan lay motionless on the wide bed, hearing nothing but the slow thud of his own heartbeat, while the darkness around him felt watchful, almost predatory. Then a sound broke the stillness, the subtle click of the bathroom door. Light spilled under the crack, and Vanessa's voice drifted out, cold and businesslike, so out of place it made Ethan's chest tighten. "Colin, listen to me. The doctor said he might stay like this for weeks, maybe months. This is our perfect window." Colin's response buzzed through the phone, dry and impatient. "I've prepared the documents. As long as he's considered unconscious, I can temporarily take control of the company. The board won't question it." Vanessa laughed softly, a sound laced with venom. "Good. Once everything is under your name, we move the funds to the offshore accounts. No trace, no trail." Ethan clenched his jaw until it ached. Colin, his friend for over a decade, betraying him in the most calculated way. Colin lowered his voice. "But the life insurance? To claim it, he has to—" "Die," Vanessa finished, speaking as calmly as if she were reading a grocery list. "An overdose of sedatives? A comatose patient can't defend himself." The words sliced into Ethan like 1,000 needles. The heart monitor trembled, and he forced himself to breathe evenly, desperate not to expose his awareness. But the next part made him want to leap off the bed. "And Emma," Vanessa continued, her tone terrifyingly matter-of-fact. "If she stays here, things get messy. I found a boarding school in Switzerland. They take her immediately, far enough that no one will find her." "Vanessa, are you serious?" Colin asked, voice wavering. "Colin, we're building a new life. I don't want Ethan's past tagging along. A child isn't our responsibility." Ethan felt the blood in his veins turn to ice. Emma, his little girl. At that moment, a faint sound stirred in the hallway. A soft gasp, a tiny shift. But Ethan knew instantly who it was. Lena. She had overheard something she was never meant to hear. He pictured her standing outside the door, eyes wide, hand gripping the doorknob until her knuckles whitened. Inside the bathroom, Vanessa turned on the faucet to mask the noise. Ethan snapped his eyes shut again, forcing stillness. The door opened. Vanessa emerged, drying her hands, and placed a cold palm on his chest. "Sleep well, darling," she whispered, sweet as poison. After she left, Ethan cracked his eyes open, just enough to see Lena's shadow slipping away down the hallway, shoulders trembling. In that moment, Ethan understood he was no longer alone in this nightmare. And from now on, he wasn't just fighting to survive. He was fighting to save Emma, and the woman who had unknowingly become a witness to a monstrous truth. Morning slipped into the Brentwood Hills estate with a pale, mist-like light, but it did nothing to warm the cold tension filling the house. Ethan heard the soft click of the door and recognized Lena's careful footsteps. She sat beside him for a long moment, so quiet that Ethan could hear the faint tremble in her breathing. "Mr. Ethan," she whispered, as if afraid even the walls might be listening. "I know you can't hear me, but I have to say this. I can't keep it inside anymore." Ethan remained still, but his heart tightened. "Last night, I was in the hallway." Lena swallowed hard. "I heard Mrs. Vanessa and Mr. Colin. They're planning to hurt you." Her voice cracked at the final words. "I wanted to go to the police," she continued, wringing her hands until her knuckles turned white. "But I'm just a housemaid. Who would believe me? They're rich, powerful, and they know how to hide things. I'm afraid if I speak up, I'll be silenced first." Ethan wanted to tell her he believed her, that he was grateful, that she wasn't alone. But he stayed motionless, trapped in the role he had chosen. Lena bowed her head, her voice low but unwavering. "But no matter who I am, I swear I'll protect you and Emma. Even if I lose my job, even if I have to face Mrs. Vanessa directly, I won't let her hurt either of you." After that vow, Lena rose, and Ethan felt as though an invisible shield had been placed between him and the darkness filling the house. The following days, the tension inside the estate stretched tight like an overwound string. Vanessa often entered the room with a tray of medication, her eyes flashing with that chilling coldness that made Ethan want to spring up and fight. But every time she reached for a bottle, there was always an interruption. "Mrs. Vanessa, the living room needs your signature." "Mrs. Vanessa, there's a delivery waiting at the gate." She would grit her teeth in irritation while Lena stood calmly nearby, alert, steady, like a cat ready to leap into the dark to shield its young. Emma clung to Lena more and more, as if her child's intuition sensed who truly cared for her. "Lena," she whispered one evening, "Daddy is really sad, right? I know Mrs. Vanessa doesn't love him. She never looks at him the way Mama Anna used to." Lena pulled the little girl close, softening her voice. "Just believe that your dad will come back, and when he does, everything will be okay." Meanwhile, across the city, Marcus, the only person who knew the truth, wasn't sitting still. He had hired a private investigator, ordering him to follow Colin, track suspicious financial movements, and uncover whether the crash was truly an accident. In the deepening shadows of Brentwood Hills, everyone was preparing for their own private battle. Ethan couldn't move, but now he understood. He was no longer fighting alone. The days following Lena's quiet vow wrapped the Brentwood Hills mansion in a tension so thick it seemed to cling to the walls. Every footstep sounded sharper, every silence stretched too long, and Ethan, though still weak and confined to bed, had regained enough strength to open his eyes, move slightly, and speak in hoarse whispers. Only Marcus and Lena knew he was awake. Both agreed to protect the secret. That gray afternoon, when the sky outside looked ready to collapse under its own weight, Marcus entered Ethan's room with a face carved from worry and resolve. He closed the door, pulled the curtain shut, then came closer. "Any news?" Ethan whispered, voice thin as breath. "Yes," Marcus said, pulling out a thick file. "And it's serious." He placed the documents on the table. The sound of paper shifting in the quiet room made Ethan's chest tighten. The investigator found everything. Colin embezzled company funds for 8 months using forged documents and a shell corporation. And here, Marcus tapped a page, is the signed confession of the mechanic who sabotaged your brakes. Ethan felt the memory of the crash punch through him again. The screech, the metal twisting, the darkness swallowing everything. "And Vanessa?" Ethan asked, though he already knew. "She's involved," Marcus answered. "She signed several forged documents. We have enough to bring both of them down." Ethan closed his eyes briefly, not in pain, but because betrayal still stung like a fresh wound. Then, as his breath steadied, a different face appeared in his mind. Lena, sitting by his bed late at night, her voice trembling as she spoke of Arya's illness, the hollow fear in her eyes, the way she promised to protect him and Emma without expecting anything in return. Ethan opened his eyes again. "Before we go after them, I need you to do something." Marcus leaned in. "What is it?" "Lena has a daughter," Ethan whispered. "Arya. She's very sick. The treatment is expensive. Too expensive. I want to help, but she can't know it's me." Marcus blinked, stunned. "Ethan, you barely survived, and you're thinking about—" "She saved me," Ethan said, voice quiet but firm. "Now it's my turn." Something softened in Marcus's eyes. "I'll take care of it, and your name stays hidden." The next morning, Marcus found Lena in the kitchen preparing soup for Ethan. When he told her an anonymous donor would cover Arya's entire treatment plan, she froze. Then, as the reality sank in, her legs buckled and she collapsed into a chair, hands trembling. "This can't be real. Oh God, thank you. Thank you." That night, Lena sat beside Ethan, holding his hand between hers. "If you can hear me," she whispered, "someone saved my little girl. Arya has a chance now. She's going to live. I thought I had lost everything." Ethan looked back at her, his eyes saying what his voice couldn't. Weeks passed. Arya responded well to her new treatment. Though still fragile, she regained enough strength to take short, supervised outings. One weekend, Lena brought Arya to the mansion. Emma rushed toward her instantly, and the two children connected as if drawn together by something unseen. They sat on the grass, arranging stones, drawing butterflies with chalk, talking about purple, their shared favorite color. Watching from the window, Ethan felt his throat tighten. Their laughter filtered into the room like sunlight, and for the first time in a long time, hope felt real again. But peace never lasts long in a house full of secrets. Vanessa's irritation grew sharper each day. "That maid is everywhere. She's ruining everything." "Colin, we have to finish this." Colin's voice trembled with anxiety. "We need to act soon. If Ethan wakes up—" "He won't wake up," Vanessa hissed, "and I'll make sure of it." Ethan heard every word, and something inside him ignited, not fear, but fire. This time, he wasn't fighting just to survive. He was preparing to win. Later that night, the house seemed to hold its breath. Every room wrapped in a tension so dense it felt almost physical. Ethan lay awake, not from pain, but from the weight of the plans forming in his mind. Marcus's investigator had completed everything. The forged documents, offshore transfers, the mechanic's confession, all sealed into a file heavy enough to end Vanessa and Colin forever. Tomorrow the truth would explode. But before the storm arrived, there was one person who deserved to know everything, and deserved to hear it from him. Marcus stepped inside quietly. "Ethan, she's here." Ethan nodded, and Marcus opened the door for Lena before slipping out, closing it behind him. Lena entered hesitantly, worry written in the lines around her eyes. "Mr. Ethan," Marcus said. Her voice broke when Ethan slowly pushed himself upright, moving weakly but steadily. His eyes were fully open, clear, aware, alive. "Lena," he said softly. She stumbled back a step, hands trembling. "My God, how long have you—" He gestured for her to come closer. Once she sat at the edge of the bed, Ethan told her everything. The phone call he overheard in the hospital, the moment he realized Vanessa wanted him dead, the choice to fake unconsciousness, the secret investigation with Marcus and the private detective. Lena's face drained of color as each detail unfolded. But Ethan wasn't finished. "There's one more thing," he added. "The person paying for Arya's treatment is me." Lena's hand flew to her mouth, eyes flooding instantly. "But why?" "Because you saved me," Ethan replied, looking straight at her. "You protected me and Emma, and the way you hold Arya, the way you care for Emma, it reminded me of what family really means." Tears slipped down her cheeks, not quiet tears, but the kind that break through after months of fear, exhaustion, and silent prayers. Ethan laid his hand gently over hers. "Tomorrow I'm confronting Vanessa and Colin. Things may get ugly. I need you to protect Emma. She trusts you completely." Lena nodded without hesitation. "I will, with everything I have." In that dimly lit room, they were no longer patient and housekeeper. They were allies. They were a family born from pain and courage. After Lena left the room to put Emma to sleep, the door closed softly behind her, leaving Ethan alone in the dim glow of the bedside lamp, the last breath of peace before the storm. Yet inside Ethan, that fragile peace was already cracking. Tomorrow would end everything for the people who betrayed him. But tonight was the decisive moment. He rose slowly, his legs still heavy, as if weighed down by stone, but his determination filled every step until the trembling faded. He was ready. Marcus arrived a moment later, carrying the heavy folder whose contents Ethan could almost feel, pulsing through the leather. Marcus looked at him with a mixture of worry and resolve, whispering, "If you're not ready, we can wait one more day." Ethan shook his head. "No, they plan to kill me tonight. So tonight, I end it." No more words were needed. They descended the stairs in silence, their shadows stretching long across the wooden steps. Downstairs, the warm yellow light from the living room spilled over Vanessa's face as she examined the liquid swirling gently in a glass. Colin stood behind her, his hands trembling, though his voice tried to imitate a false calm. "One dose, and his heart will stop within minutes." Vanessa's lips curved into a thin smile, sharp as cracked glass. "And no one will suspect a thing. It's sad that it has to end like this. But sometimes we must sacrifice to live free." She reached for the glass, and at that exact moment, every light in the room blazed on at once. Harsh white light washed over their stunned faces, exposing every line, every shadow, every truth they'd tried to bury. Vanessa spun around and froze. Ethan walked in. No longer weak, no longer a dying man, but a different version of himself. A man returned from the edge of death, burning with a fire that nothing could put out. His calm expression chilled the room more than the sudden brightness. "Tired of waiting for me to die?" Ethan said, his voice low and razor-sharp. Marcus, the attorney, and 2 uniformed officers stepped in behind him, forming a wall that couldn't be breached. Ethan placed the thick folder on the glass table with a heavy thud that made both Vanessa and Colin flinch. "Everything is here," he said. "The embezzled funds, the forged documents, offshore accounts, and the confession about sabotaging my brakes." Colin's face drained of color. "No, she forced me. Vanessa made me—" "Coward!" Vanessa shrieked, her face twisting in fear. "You sabotaged the car. You wanted the company—" "Enough!" the officer cut in coldly. "Both of you are under arrest." The click of the handcuffs echoed through the room, a metallic note marking the beginning of the end for them, the first sound of the life awaiting them behind bars. Ethan didn't watch them being led away. He turned and hurried upstairs as fast as his recovering strength allowed, his heart pounding not with fear, but with the certainty that 2 people he loved were waiting for him. When he pushed open the door, Emma ran to him like a frightened bird finally finding its home. "Daddy, you're awake? I thought you left me." Ethan scooped her into his arms, holding her so tight he felt himself trembling. Lena stood behind, eyes red, and when Ethan opened one arm to her, she stepped into it without hesitation, letting him hold her and Emma together. 3 people melting into one embrace. In that little room, for the first time after endless storms, Ethan understood something profound. Family isn't something you simply have. It's something you protect. A few months passed like the final heavy rain of the season, washing away the last shadows of the nightmare that once swallowed Ethan's life. Sentencing day arrived under a clear morning sky. Vanessa received 14 years in prison for attempted murder and embezzlement, while Colin was given 17 years for vehicle sabotage, document forgery, and full complicity in the scheme. When the courtroom doors closed, Ethan felt a vast space open inside him, not emptiness, but room for a new life to grow. Hale dynamics slowly returned to its rhythm. Ethan met with the board, reshaped key positions, and welcomed new partners Marcus had recommended, people of integrity and clear vision. "We're not just rebuilding," Ethan said in his first meeting after months away. "We're going to build something better." And he meant every word. Back at Brentwood Hills, Lena too began a new path. Ethan offered her the role of household manager, an official position with a generous salary, full benefits, and decision-making authority over the estate. Lena cried when she heard it, but Ethan simply smiled and said, "Lena, you kept this house standing when I couldn't. You deserve far more than what I can give." When Arya's health improved, she moved into the room beside Emma's. From the moment they reunited, the girls were inseparable, studying side by side, drawing chalk pictures in the backyard, laughing through long, breezy afternoons. To Ethan, their laughter was the most beautiful sound the mansion had heard in years. Ethan and Lena grew closer in the most natural way. Hospital visits, where they sat beside Arya during each round of chemotherapy, created a quiet understanding between them, deeper than any conversation. Lena would sit in a plastic chair, Arya's small hand in hers, while Ethan stood close enough that she could lean on his shoulder whenever fear became too heavy. When night fell after Emma and Arya were asleep, Ethan and Lena often sat together on the balcony, each with a warm cup of tea. The soft yellow glow from the living room blended with moonlight, wrapping them in a gentle halo like a warm blanket. They shared pieces of their pasts, ones time had tried to hide. Ethan spoke of Anna, of a marriage as beautiful as sunrise that faded in a hospital room. Lena told him about her struggles in East L.A., about raising Arya alone while every door seemed to slam shut. Neither of them mentioned love, neither defined what was quietly growing. But in the lingering eye contact, in the way Lena rested her hand lightly on Ethan's when he spoke of painful memories, in the way Ethan draped a blanket over her shoulders when the wind turned cold, everything spoke of something taking root, slowly, steadily, beautifully, like a green sprout pushing through stone. And for the first time in what felt like a lifetime, the future didn't scare him anymore. 5 years had passed since that fateful night, and life had changed in ways none of them could have imagined. At 46, Ethan Hale looked calmer and more grounded than ever. A few silver strands near his temples didn't age him. They simply made him look like someone who had walked through darkness and returned with the light. Mornings in the Brentwood Hills home now began with laughter echoing through the kitchen. Emma, now 13, talked so fast over breakfast it was hard to keep up. "Dad, don't forget to film my performance." "I'm serious. I want the spin at the end recorded perfectly." Ethan laughed. "I've been practicing keeping my hands steady all week." Beside them, Arya, 12, healthy, and 5 years cancer-free, proudly held up the science model she and Ethan had built together. "Dad says if I try my best, this should definitely get an A+. Ethan tapped her forehead gently. "Not because I say so, because you did great." Arya no longer called him uncle. 3 years ago, the adoption papers were approved. To her, Ethan wasn't just the man who saved her. He was her father, in every sense of the word. After breakfast, as the girls ran upstairs to get ready for school, Ethan and Lena stood on the balcony, warm sunlight brushing their shoulders. Lena leaned against the railing, her smile soft as morning light. "What would you think if our family grew a little bigger?" she asked, half teasing, half hoping. Ethan turned to her, eyes glowing with something deep and warm. "I think," he murmured, "there's still room in this house, and plenty of love." That afternoon, they attended Emma's school performance and Arya's science presentation. Ethan and Lena sat side by side, their fingers naturally intertwining, as they watched the two girls shine on stage. Pride wasn't just an emotion. It was something that filled their chests until it felt too full. Later that night, after the girls had fallen asleep, Lena stood before their wedding photo. A simple ceremony in the backyard, their eyes at the altar clear with unspoken vows. Ethan stepped behind her, wrapping his arms around her, resting his chin softly on her shoulder. "Do you know what changed my life?" he whispered. "What?" Lena asked, holding his hands. He tightened his embrace, as if holding both past and future at once. "Pretending to be unconscious was the thing that finally opened my eyes." Lena smiled, the smile of a woman who knew that although their story began in pain, the love that grew from it was the most beautiful and enduring part of their lives.